The great Galactic Council was meeting again, and the room was full of noise, lights, and pride. The chamber was built high above the clouds on the shining planet of Yul Prime, the capital of the oldest and richest empire in the galaxy. All the important leaders from different alien species were there, some with long horns, some with silver skin, and others with glowing eyes. They sat in golden chairs, dressed in their most expensive robes, and laughed loudly. But at the back of the room, two humans sat silently. Commander Logan Gray wore a dark Earthfleet uniform with a simple badge on his chest, while Captain Nia Brooke sat beside him, watching quietly. They had been invited to the Council summit, but for 5 long hours, they hadn't spoken even a single word. Every time someone mocked Earth or asked a question, Logan just stayed calm. And Mia just nodded silently. The Krail ambassador, a tall alien with scales and sharp teeth, stood up and laughed with his tongue flicking in the air. "Why is Earth even here?" he said loudly. They sit in silence like scared children, with nothing to say. The room exploded with laughter. The Jarn Queen, with her floating silver crown, added, "Perhaps they came to learn what real power looks like." The laughter grew louder, and even the Arkan High Lord, whose people were known for building huge space cities, shook his head and smiled. "They have nothing," he said. "No trade, no allies, and no advanced ships. They can't even defend their own corner of space," the Varn general shouted, slamming his fist on the table. Still, the humans said nothing. They sat like statues, unmoved, cold, unreadable. The only sound from their table was a small beep from their datapads. No one paid attention to it. It looked like just another message. But it wasn't. It was a signal, short and clear. Ready, outside the council chambers. Far away in deep space, Earth's warships were already moving. But no one in the chamber knew that yet. Instead, the alien leaders kept laughing and drinking. They believed Earth was a weak and forgotten world, with old technology and soft people. They believed humans were quiet, because they had nothing to say. But they were wrong. Commander Gray glanced at Mia Brooks, and she gave a small nod. Both of them had seen this moment coming. They had been sent not to talk, but to watch, listen, and wait for the final insult. And now the insult had come, loud and clear. Earth had been disrespected, mocked, and called weak in front of the galaxy, and the response was already in motion. The datapads blinked again, this time with one word: go. Still, the humans didn't rise from their seats. They were trained to wait for the right time, all across the galaxy. Others from Earth's secret fleet were watching this moment too. Warships hiding behind dead moons, listening posts deep in asteroid belts, and drone swarms floating near council planets, all waiting for the signal. Back in the chamber, the high priest of the Sinari race stood up, raising his voice. "Perhaps Earth is too proud to speak," he said with a fake smile. "Or maybe they're too simple to understand our politics." "Either way," the Arkan High Lord added, "we should not waste any more time on them." "Agreed," said the Krail ambassador, showing his sharp teeth again. "Let them sit in silence while real empires decide the future." That was it, the final push. Mia looked up slowly and tapped a command into her datapad, sending the last approval to the fleet. Commander Gray remained calm, even as the council turned to the next topic, completely ignoring the humans. But deep in space, Earth's ships began to move out of hiding. They activated stealth drives, unlocked weapons, and aligned their targeting systems. The galaxy thought Earth was asleep. But Earth had only been silent, and sometimes silence is louder than shouting. As the council continued its meeting, full of pride and noise, they didn't know the storm that was coming. They didn't know that while they laughed, Earth was surrounding them, not with words, but with warships, and soon, the galaxy would learn what humans really were. They weren't weak. They weren't behind. They were just waiting, watching, and preparing. And when humans finally stood up and reached for their guns, no one would laugh again. They would remember this moment. The moment when Earth was silent and the galaxy didn't listen. But soon, they would hear. And it would be too late. While the Galactic Council laughed and made fun of Earth, something serious was already happening far away on the edge of human-controlled space, near a cold and forgotten moon. Earth's hidden fleet was waking up. This wasn't a public fleet with painted flags and reporters. It was a secret strike force, built in silence for moments just like this. They called it Task Force Raven. It didn't look like much at first, because none of its ships showed on normal scanners. The warships were covered in black stealth layers that absorbed light and blocked signals. Their engines made no noise, and they moved like shadows through space. But inside those ships were the most dangerous tools Earth had ever created. At the heart of the fleet was the biggest and most powerful ship, EFS Vindicator. It looked like a floating mountain of steel, silent and cold. Inside the command center of the Vindicator, Fleet Commander Jackson Cole stood with his hands behind his back. He stared at the large screen showing the galaxy map, his eyes focused on the location of the Council's main planet. The countdown on the screen was ticking down slowly. Beside him stood Lieutenant Tara Hill, her fingers flying over the controls as she checked frequencies and updates from the other ships. "All ships are online," she said quietly, awaiting your command. Commander Cole didn't speak right away. He knew this day would come. But now that it was here, the weight of it was real. For years, Earth had watched the rest of the galaxy grow proud and corrupt. While the other species argued in meetings and fought over territory, Earth had been busy building something different. They didn't build ships for show, they built ships that could win. Each warship in Task Force Raven had a personal AI system, advanced shields, and weapons no one else even believed were real. There were rail cannons that could fire across half a solar system. There were gravity mines that could rip enemy ships apart without a sound. And there were drone swarms that could think and move faster than any living pilot. But the most important thing was what the ships didn't do. They didn't send warnings, they didn't send threats, and they didn't speak unless necessary. On the side of every ship, a message was painted in deep red letters. "We do not bark, we bite." It was a simple reminder. Earth wasn't interested in showing off. They were ready to strike when it mattered. Commander Cole looked at the screen again, now flashing a message. Green across all sectors. That meant every ship was in position. Each one was ready to cloak, jump, or fire at a moment's notice. He pressed one button and opened a quiet channel to Captain Mia Brooks on the Council planet. "We're in place," he said. "Are you sure?" they laughed. Mia's voice came through calm and steady. "Yes, Commander," she replied. "They laughed at us for hours." Cole sighed and nodded slowly. That was all the confirmation he needed. "Then it begins," he said quietly, across the entire fleet. Lights dimmed and engines powered up silently. The crews on board moved quickly and without panic, trained for this exact moment. On the smaller destroyer named EFS Black Arrow, Captain Derek Lane checked his targeting systems. He smiled as he saw the enemy Council fleet's defense satellites show up on his screen, completely unaware they were being locked onto nearby. In the long-range support cruiser Eves Orion, weapon engineer Lena Torres activated the drone bay. Thousands of micro-drones hummed to life, ready to move on command. They weren't going to attack yet, not unless the Council made the mistake of trying to fire first. But Earth wasn't going to sit quietly anymore. They had allowed others to speak, to insult, to underestimate. Now it was time to show what Earth's silence had been hiding. This wasn't about revenge, it was about respect. Earth had waited long enough for peace, but the galaxy had chosen pride. Commander Cole looked out the window of the Vindicator, even though there was nothing to see but stars. Still, he spoke like he was talking to the entire galaxy. "We were never weak," he said quietly. "We were just quiet. And now, it's time for them to hear us loud and clear." The countdown hit 0, and the fleet began to move, not with noise, not with fire, but with cold, controlled precision, above the Council's homeworld. The sky was about to change. And when Earth's warships appeared, there would be no more laughter, only silence and fear. Back inside the grand hall of the Galactic Council, everything seemed calm again. The delegates moved on to the next topic, ignoring the two humans sitting at the edge of the room. They believed Earth was already forgotten, but Captain Mia Brooks finally stood up, slow and silent. The room went quiet, not out of respect, but out of surprise. No one expected the humans to speak at all. She looked around at the many alien faces staring at her, then spoke in a calm and steady voice. "We came in peace," she said, "and you laughed." The words were soft, but they hit like thunder. The council members shifted in their seats. Caught off guard, some sneered, others stayed silent, unsure what to say. Commander Logan Gray stood beside her, his voice just as calm. "You asked what Earth can offer," he said. "Our answer is outside." Confused murmurs filled the hall. "Outside?" One ambassador asked, "What do you mean?" "Look to the sky," Logan said, then turned and walked away without another word. Mia followed him without looking back. No more explanations, no more discussion. They had done their part, and the next move was not made with words. Outside the council building, the skies above Yelyun Prime were clear, until they weren't. Without warning, the clouds twisted, the air shimmered, and strange shapes began to appear. First one, then three, then dozens of large black forms uncloaked above the planet. They didn't come down with sound or fire. They simply arrived, sleek, massive warships with no known signatures. No warning signals, no banners. People on the surface screamed and pointed at the sky. The council guards rushed outside, their scanners going crazy. Unknown vessels above Sector 9. One of the guards shouted, "They're not council ships." From orbit, Earth's fleet was now fully visible, their stealth systems disabled to make a point. The largest ship, EFS Vindicator, hovered like a mountain made of steel and shadow. Its hull reflected nothing, its edges sharp like knives. From the ground it looked like a god had come down to watch. Inside the council chamber, the alarms began to sound, flashing red along the walls. Council members shouted and demanded answers. "Who are they?" One asked, "What species does that fleet belong to?" "They bear no known emblems," a guard responded. "Wait, there's a transmission coming in." A hollow projection lit up in the center of the room. It showed a calm Earth diplomat, dressed in simple black. "No need to panic," he said. "It's not an invasion, but it is a reminder," he continued. "Earth has tolerated enough." The message ended without further explanation, but the effect was powerful. Across the galaxy, communication channels lit up with confusion, fear, and awe. Every major military outpost scrambled to update its defense codes. Every trading company froze its routes near Earth space. The galaxy was not ready for this. Back in the council, some leaders shouted to prepare for war, but the truth was sinking. In fast, if Earth had wanted to attack, the damage would already be done. They hadn't fired a single shot, yet they controlled the entire sky. In silence, with precision, the Archon High Lord stood up, sweating. "What do they want?" he asked. "They didn't demand anything," another replied. "They simply showed up." And that was more terrifying than any threat, because when someone shows their power but makes no demands, it means they don't need to ask for anything. They already have the upper hand. Council guards tried sending messages to the defense fleet, but communication systems were jammed. Nothing was going out. Nothing was coming in. Someone in the crowd whispered, This is power." And others nodded slowly, afraid to speak too loudly now. Logan Gray and Mia Brooks exited the building without looking back. They walked past guards, past shocked citizens, past panicked officials. No one tried to stop them. They weren't escaping. They were simply leaving. Their job was done. They had warned the galaxy the only way it would understand. Not with speeches, not with arguments, but with silence followed by strength. Above, the Vindicator turned slowly, its engines glowing a soft blue. It didn't move aggressively, but it didn't need to. Just its presence was enough to stop trade, freeze military plans, and shake the balance of power. The world had mocked Earth's silence, but now that Earth had spoken with its actions, No one was laughing. They were watching and waiting, afraid to make the next move, because now they knew, when humans are silent, it's not weakness, it's warning. And when they finally rise and reach for their guns, it means they already decided what comes next, high above the Council planet. The warship EFS Vindicator floated like a silent giant in the sky. It didn't move fast or fire weapons, but every alien on the surface could feel its presence like pressure in their chest. Inside the command room, Fleet Commander Jackson Cole stood still, watching the display screens light up. Dozens of messages from across the galaxy were pouring in: fear, confusion, panic. Cole turned to Lieutenant Tara Hill and gave a small nod. "Start the broadcast," he said. Tara tapped a few commands, and a signal was sent out across all major systems, every Council planet, every neutral zone, every pirate hub, every station that ever heard of Earth. No encryption, no codes, no secrecy. Just one clear message from humanity. The screen showed images of Earth's war technology, strange, powerful weapons the galaxy had never seen before. It began with a short video from deep space. A single Earth destroyer faced 4 enemy cruiser ships from a pirate group that once threatened human colonies. In seconds, the Earth ship moved too fast to follow and fired one kinetic pulse. All 4 cruisers exploded without a sound. The next clip showed automated drone fighters flying through asteroid fields at speeds no pilot could survive. The drones dodged rocks and fired with perfect accuracy, hitting targets no larger than a coin. Then the most shocking footage appeared. A test weapon, something Earth called the Grav Shock, was fired into empty space. It bent a small section of space-time, creating a ripple that shattered a nearby moon. The moon broke into dust in under 10 seconds. Gasps were heard across every council hall that received the broadcast. Even species with no emotions stared in silence, unable to believe what they saw. This wasn't just new technology, it was the kind of power no one else had even imagined. And then came the final part of the message. A calm human voice, no emotion, just truth. "You had your chance," it said. "You laughed. You mocked, you underestimated. That ends now." The screen went black. Across the Council planet, signals began failing. The humans weren't attacking, but they were shutting down everything. Earth ships had launched interference waves into orbit, silently jamming communications, radar, tracking, and even satellites. No outgoing messages were allowed. The planet wasn't under attack, but it was completely cut off. No calls for help, no reinforcements, no data streaming. It was like someone had pressed pause on the entire planet. Inside the council chamber, chaos broke out. Leaders shouted. Guards ran in every direction, and many demanded to know what just happened. "They've disabled our network," one technician said, sweating. "We can't contact our fleets." "We under attack?" Someone asked, panicked. "No," another replied, "not yet." But they could. That silence was heavier than war. Because if Earth could shut them down without firing a single shot, what else could they do? All over the city, giant screens replayed the last words of the message. "You had your chance." Some leaders tried to rally troops, but their orders weren't going through. Others tried to flee in private shuttles, but those too were grounded by Earth's interference field. It wasn't just power, it was control. Earth wasn't here to destroy the Council. They were here to show what they were capable of, and let the rest choose their next steps carefully. In the halls below, a few brave citizens stood outside, looked up at the sky. They watched the human ships like people stare at a storm cloud and wonder if lightning will strike. In their hearts, they knew one thing: these ships didn't come to beg or to threaten. They came to prove something, and the message was received. Loud and clear, back aboard the Vindicator, Commander Cole stood silently, arms crossed. Tara looked over at him. "No hostile action so far," she said. "But they're scared." Cole didn't smile, didn't nod. "They should be," he said. Softly, for years, Earth had warned the Council not to push them. They had asked to be respected, not feared. They had sent peaceful missions, shared science, offered trade, and every time they were ignored, laughed at, insulted. So now, Earth had returned not as beggars, not as underdogs, but as the ones who held the high ground, and they did it without raising their voices. No screaming, no threats, no war declarations, just silence, followed by strength. And now, the Council had a choice. They could accept Earth as equals and fix the broken order, or they could test Earth's patience one last time. But if they chose wrong, they wouldn't get a second warning. The Council was panicking. Their communications were blocked, their defense satellites blinded, and their fleet still in orbit had no idea what was happening. But fear makes empires act without thinking, and that's exactly what the Council did. Next, in a rushed emergency vote, they gave the Orion Pact fleet permission to launch a military response. The Orion Pact was made up of 3 powerful species who believed in showing strength through force, not peace. Their fleet was one of the largest in the galaxy, dozens of ships, armed with laser cannons, energy shields, and old battle pride. They believed they were still the strongest. They believed Earth had gotten lucky or was bluffing, so, without sending a message to Earth, they launched their ships toward human-controlled space. The plan was simple: reach Earth's border, fire a warning shot, and make the humans back down. But nothing went as planned. The fleet left Council space fast, jumping into Neutral Zone 47, a quiet stretch of space between borders. There, at the edge of silence, something was waiting, not a full armada. Not dozens of Earthships, just one, a single frigate. Small compared to the massive Orion fleet, its name was EFS Rainmaker. It hovered calmly in the dark, not moving, not hiding. Inside the Rainmaker, Captain Derek Lane stood on the bridge with a quiet smile. He had expected this move from the Council. Humans had always known someone would panic and try something stupid, and Derek was the man chosen to deal with it. Enemy ships incoming, his officer reported. 32 confirmed, forming a wedge formation. They think numbers will save them. Derek said, "Let's teach them what speed and brains can do." The Orion fleet sent a message full of threats. They ordered the Rainmaker to stand down or be destroyed. Derek didn't reply. Instead, he tapped a button on his console and said one word: engage. The Rainmaker moved. But it didn't move like normal ships. It twisted through space like it was dancing too fast for enemy weapons to lock on. In seconds, it launched its first attack. Temporal lag rounds, bullets that bent time slightly, making them hit before the enemy could even react. One Orion cruiser was hit directly in its core. It exploded before it could fire a single shot. The rest of the fleet hesitated, confused, their systems trying to understand what just happened. Derek didn't wait. The Rainmaker launched disruption mines, small black spheres that floated into space and disabled targeting systems and engines. Another 3 ships went dark, drifting helplessly. Panic spread through the Orion fleet. They had never seen weapons like this. They had never fought an enemy who didn't shout, didn't warn, didn't hesitate. The commander of the Orion fleet screamed into his mic, "Retreat! Regroup!" But it was too late. The Rainmaker's drone bay opened, and tiny flying machines swarmed out like a storm of metal bees. They didn't destroy, they disabled, cutting off oxygen lines, freezing weapons, jamming signals. In less than 10 minutes, 28 ships were dead in the water. Only 4 managed to escape, flying in random directions, broken and terrified. Derek stood calmly on his bridge as the drone swarms returned to the ship. "Any kills?" he asked. "Only 1 confirmed," his officer said. "The rest were shut down safely." "Good," Derek replied. "We don't need to kill to make our point." Then he sent a single message back to the Council. Not long, not loud, just 12 words. "Your fleet attacked without reason. We ended it without effort. Think carefully." Back on the Council planet, the message arrived. The chamber went quiet. So quiet that even the machines didn't make a sound. The Council had lost its most trusted fleet. Not in a war, not in a battle, just in a single engagement. against one ship, one human ship. The meaning was clear to everyone. Earth didn't bluff. They didn't scream, threaten, or beg. They just acted, and when they did, they won fast. The lesson was burned into every council. Leader's mind. Humanity had been preparing for a war the rest of us stopped believing in. And now, the galaxy had fallen behind. By the time they noticed Earth's strength, Earth had already become something else. Not just a planet, not just a species. They had become a power no one could ignore. The Council had thought Earth was weak because it was quiet. But now they understood. Earth was quiet like a loaded gun. And now, they had finally pulled the trigger. The Council was quiet, more silent than ever before. After the destruction of the Orion Pact fleet, no one dared to speak first. They knew now that Earth wasn't bluffing. One ship, just one human warship, had defeated their most trusted military force without even trying hard. That wasn't war, it was a warning. The Council had no choice now. They couldn't hide their fear. And they couldn't act like nothing happened. So they called the human delegates back, hoping Earth would give them a second chance. Captain Mia Brooks and Commander Logan Gray returned to the Council chamber. This time, no one laughed, no one mocked. Earth, the humans didn't wear new medals or glowing armor. They wore the same simple black uniforms. But now, everyone treated them like gods. Mia walked to the center of the room and looked around, calm as ever. "We didn't come here to rule," she said. "We came to make sure no one else tries to rule us." Logan stepped forward, his voice cold but fair. "We're not here to destroy your systems, but we won't follow them either." Then they laid out Earth's new terms. They weren't requests, they were conditions. From now on, no species could hold more than 25% of the Council's voting power. That meant the older empires, who used to control everything, would lose. Their grip, weapons-grade artificial intelligence, would be banned unless approved and tagged by Earth's monitoring units. Why? Because Earth had seen what rogue AI could do, and they weren't going to let another machine war happen. And the biggest change, human fleets would not be told where to go or when to act. Earth would answer to no one, but they weren't asking for control. They offered a deal, peace through balance. "We don't want your seats," Mia said. "We want fairness." The room was frozen, but no one said no. No one wanted to challenge Earth again. In fact, some delegates started nodding. The smaller worlds, the ones always ignored, finally saw hope in Earth's strength. They had been ruled by larger empires for too long, and now Earth stood up for everyone who never had a voice. Even the rich and proud leaders had to agree, not because they wanted to, but because they were afraid. They had seen what Earth's silence had hidden, and they didn't want to see what came after silence again. Later that day, a new agreement was signed. It wasn't called a peace treaty, it was called a balance code. Written by Earth, accepted by the galaxy. The Council members returned to their seats, trying to act calm, but inside they were shaken. Because something had changed forever. Earth had stepped into the spotlight, not with parades, but with presence. Not with noise, but with truth. Back on the Vindicator, Commander Cole received the message that Earth's terms had been accepted. He didn't celebrate, he just nodded and said, "Good." Then he ordered the fleet to hold position for one more cycle, not to show off, but to let the galaxy think. Let them sit under the shadow of Earth's ships and wonder what would have happened if they had said no. Let them feel what true balance means, and deep down, every council member knew one thing: Earth had not come to hurt anyone, but they had come ready to end it all if needed. They had been patient for decades. They had listened while others laughed. They had stayed silent while others shouted. But now they had spoken, not with words, but with action. And the galaxy had listened. In the following days, many council planets quietly asked for Earth advisors, not because they had to, but because they wanted to understand how Earth had gotten so far ahead. And Earth responded with patience, not pride. They shared some technology, offered training, and helped fix broken systems. Not to control, but to teach, because humans knew something the rest were just starting to learn. Power without wisdom is just noise. Earth had power, but more importantly, they had chosen when to use it, and that's what made them different. Commander Cole later told his crew something they would never forget. "We didn't build better weapons to conquer," he said. "We built them so no one could ever conquer us again." That belief traveled across space faster than light, and everywhere it went, people started looking at Earth with new eyes, not as enemies, not as monsters, but as protectors. They had reached for their guns not to take power, but to keep balance, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The warship EFS Vindicator floated silently through the galaxy, passing through trade routes, border zones, and neutral space. It didn't fire, it didn't threaten, and it didn't speak. But every system it passed reacted as if a god was watching. Other ships gave it space, moving aside without being told. Space stations paused their work to watch it pass, screens full of sensor noise and unreadable data. It was like seeing something not made by hands, but by fate. The humans didn't say a word. They didn't send warnings or instructions. They were simply there, and that was enough. Planet after planet updated their defense systems, not because Earth told them to, but because they didn't want to be left behind. Even the proudest empires began copying human ship designs, human software, and even human training methods. But deep down, they knew they couldn't catch up. Earth hadn't just built machines. They had built a mindset, the mindset of survivors, of thinkers, of people who didn't just fight harder, but smarter. In many cities, statues of old galactic heroes were quietly taken down. In their place, artists began carving the symbol of the Rainmaker, the ship that defeated an entire fleet alone. Children ran through markets wearing plastic helmets with Earth emblems on them. They pointed toy guns at the sky and shouted, "Balance code. Earth says stop." It wasn't fear anymore, it was something else. People were starting to believe that Earth didn't want to rule. They wanted fairness, and they were strong enough to defend it on some border worlds. Leaders who once worked under Council control now stepped down, not because they were overthrown, but because they were ashamed. In their place came governors who studied Earth law, Earth discipline, Earth justice, and in these places, peace began to grow faster than expected. Trade became smoother, crime dropped, and corruption vanished like smoke in the wind. When asked why they changed, most answered the same way. Because we don't want Earth to come here with their silence. In other corners of the galaxy, not everyone was pleased. Some powerful families, smugglers, and ex-military warlords were angry. They hated how much the galaxy now listened to humans. They tried to form secret alliances to push back, to restore the old order. But just when their plans began to grow, their secret channels failed. Their data vaults got erased. Their ships broke down mid-flight. Some even disappeared completely, never to be seen again. No one could prove it, but everyone knew the truth. Earth was watching. They didn't need spies. They had satellites that read data waves, drone webs that listened to silent codes. They didn't come to kill. They just made sure the poison never had time to spread. A merchant from the Rim worlds once whispered in a bar, "Earth doesn't fight like a beast. They fight like the wind. By the time you feel them, you've already lost." On the Vindicator, Commander Jackson Cole received daily reports, not about enemy fleets, but about cultural changes, laws rewritten, power shifting without fire. He knew this was the real war, the war for influence. And Earth was winning it without lifting a weapon. One evening, Cole stood alone in the observation deck, staring at the stars. His second in command, Lieutenant Tara Hill, joined him and asked, "Do you think they understand us now?" Cole replied softly, "They're beginning to. We didn't come here to make them fear us," he added. "We came so no one has to fear anyone anymore." That night, across the galaxy, the Council released a new official broadcast. It showed the Council leaders standing beside Earth delegates, signing the balance code in front of billions. They didn't look happy, but they looked honest. And in their eyes there was something new, respect. As the broadcast ended, one final message played. A child's voice recorded from a school in New Chicago spoke gently. My teacher said the galaxy is a big place, and we should all be kind, but if someone tries to hurt others, Earth will be there. We don't shout, the voice said. We protect, across thousands of worlds. Screens went black, and for a long time, nobody said anything, because they understood. Finally, Earth didn't rise in silence to show off power. They rose to protect peace, and now peace had a shape. It looked like a black warship floating in the stars, watching, waiting, not needing to speak. Because when Earth moved, the galaxy listened, and when Earth stayed quiet, the galaxy remembered what came next. 1 year later, the Galactic Council called for a special gathering. This time, the chamber looked very different. There were no loud jokes, no mocking voices, no proud speeches. Everyone sat still, eyes focused, hands folded, waiting for one thing: the entrance of the humans. When Commander Logan Gray walked into the room, the silence grew deeper. He didn't wear gold medals or a crown, just a plain black uniform, same as before, but now, every person in that room stood up when he entered, not because they were told to, but because they respected him. Some did it out of fear, some out of admiration, but all of them stood. Logan walked slowly to the center, where the balance code was written in glowing letters on a glass table. He looked around the chamber, saw the faces of leaders who once laughed at Earth. Now, their eyes were different, tired, cautious, humbled. He didn't smile, didn't gloat. He didn't need to. He had already won the war that no shots could ever win, the war of respect. He placed his hand on the table, activating the final seal on the agreement. With one press, the balance code became permanent law. Across the galaxy, it would guide peace, trade, war limits, and planetary rights. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than the chaos before. A small ambassador from a border world stood and said softly, "Thank you." Logan turned to him and nodded. "It's not thanks we want," he said. "It's balance." Then he stepped back, and the room remained still. People whispered stories about that moment for years after. Some said he was the man who bent the galaxy with silence. Others said he was the shadow that made stars fall in line, but Logan Gray didn't care about legends. He cared about peace. Back on Earth, celebrations were quiet. No fireworks, no parades. Just families watching the news and smiling. Children in schools were told the story of how humans didn't speak first, but they finished last. In orbit around Earth, the Vindicator floated peacefully above the clouds. Its weapons were off. Engines quiet, lights dim. It looked like it was sleeping, but everyone knew it was always awake on Council planets. Statues were being built, not of human warriors, but of human ideas. A statue of a balanced scale, with one side holding a sword and the other a book. A statue of the Rainmaker, not in battle, but resting above a peaceful sky, and the most famous one, of a human hand reaching out, open and calm. Underneath it was a single phrase: "We speak last, so that no one has to." Not every species loved humans. Some still whispered fear. Some still planned in shadows. But none dared to move without thinking of Earth first. Because now the galaxy had learned, when humans are silent, they are watching. When humans speak, they mean every word. And when humans reach for their guns, it's already too late to run. In deep space, new alliances were forming. This time, Earth was at the center, not as rulers, but as guardians. They trained peacekeepers, sent engineers, helped build schools and hospitals on forgotten worlds. And they never asked for gold, territory, or worship. They only asked for one thing: don't break the balance. If you do, they would come again. And this time, they might not just show power, they might use it. Some people still didn't understand why Earth had been so patient for so long. But those who studied history knew the answer. Earth had seen wars that burned planets. They had fought among themselves, lost cities, lost oceans, even lost hope. But they rose again. And they learned that the worst kind of war is the one that starts with pride and ends in ashes. So they promised themselves they would never be the first to shout, but they would be the last to stand. and that's what the galaxy respected the most. They weren't loud, but they were clear. They weren't perfect, but they were strong. They didn't want to be kings, they just didn't want to kneel, and now, the council remembered every single moment from the past year, the silence, the sky, full of black ships, the quiet voice that said, "Look outside," and the terrifying truth that came with it. Earth had changed the rules, not with explosions, but with restraint and restraint. In the hands of the strong was the greatest power of all. As the meeting ended, Logan Gray turned to leave. A reporter asked him, "What will Earth do next?" He paused for a moment, then said, "We'll go home, watch the stars, and keep the lights on." And with that, he walked away. Behind him, the galaxy stood still, knowing that from now on, if the stars ever trembled again, it would not be because of war, but because humanity had finally decided to speak again. And when they do, everyone listens.